Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this afternoon's Next Generation Assessment meeting. I am Stephanie Snyder. I am the Interim Director of Assessments here at Aussie, and am looking forward to chatting with you all this afternoon about assessment administration for spring 20, the close of assessment administration for spring 22, and looking ahead to what's coming up next. Cassidy, you can go to the next slide. As a reminder, if you are not speaking, please put yourself on mute and turn off your video to preserve bandwidth and to preserve the quality of the recording. We are recording this meeting and it will be posted on Aussie's website within about 2 days or so after the conclusion of the meeting. My colleague Assad has put a link in the chat for the sign-in sheet for today's meeting. So please, when you do have a chance, click that link so that we can record your attendance this afternoon. And if you are not able to access the chat or that link, please feel free to send an email to aussie.assessment@dc.gov so that we can make sure we have a record of your attendance. Next slide, please. Our agenda for this afternoon is to first give an introduction or reintroduction to the Aussie Office of Assessments team. We have a few new faces since the last time we all met together. I wanted to be sure that you were able to put faces with names for folks you may have been interacting with throughout this administration season. And we will go through that in a couple minutes. After that, we'll go through some 2022 assessment closeout reminders, particularly for Park and DC Science, in addition to some next steps for access for ELLs. Then we will spend some time talking about the timelines and resources for reporting 2022 assessment results. The timelines will look fairly similar to what they were in the past, but we'll get into more details later on. And then we'll have a very brief preview of looking ahead to next year, and particularly in presenting draft statewide assessment windows for spring 2023. And then we'll close out with just some reminders about how to keep in touch with us, the Aussie Assessments team, over the summer and throughout the school years. So, next slide, please. We always like to start our meetings with Aussie's Office of Assessments mission statement. It really grounds the work that we do and reminds us all why we're here. And it's that in partnership with key stakeholders such as yourselves, we create a comprehensive educational assessment program. And the goal of that program is to accurately measure student performance and produce actionable data so that you all have the tools and guidance that you need to be able to make informed decisions for the needs of all learners. Next slide. As I mentioned, my name is Stephanie Snyder. I'm the Interim Director of Assessments on our team. I will ask other members of the team to go ahead and introduce themselves at this time.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yolanda Barber. I am the assessment specialist focusing with mathematics. I have interacted with a number of you through Park Assessment and very excited to work with you as we close out the year.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chelsea Charland. I'm the Science Assessment Specialist here at Aussie. I've also interacted with a very large handful of everyone here. I'm excited to close out this assessment window and look forward to what we have going on in the summer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Assad Fulton. I'm brand new to the assessment team, focusing on special populations. I'm sure I will be in communication with a lot of you for this upcoming school year.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lavinia Ringgold, and I am the assessment specialist for test security. I've spoken with quite a few of you during school test security plans and during the administration of our assessments. and looking forward to working with you again with this upcoming school year.
And I'm Cassidy Shenley. I'm the Nape State Coordinator. I work on Nape, the National Assessment of Educational Progress. So I look forward to working with you and any schools that have been sampled for Nape in the coming years. So nice to meet you as well.
Thank you, team. And I just want to give a special recognition to Yolanda and to Cassidy and to Assad. This is their first NGA meeting. And for Yolanda and Cassidy, they've already been here a few months, but it is their first meetings. Just wanted to recognize those new folks. And Assad has been with us for 2 or 3 weeks now and is jumping right on in. And we're very excited to have him on board as well. Next slide, please. As a reminder of why we're here and what the statewide assessments in DC are, we like to include this slide. And I'm sure you're all very familiar with the various assessments, so I will not spend much more time on this, and we can move on to the next slide. We also use this graphic as kind of a grounding slide in all of our NGA meetings throughout the year to see a sense of progress on where we are with preparation for administration and then actual administration. So we've actually made it all the way through to the final line on this graphic, and we are in the process of now materials return and assessment closeout and finalizing test security files and all of these things that we'll talk about later in this meeting. But just wanted to recognize everyone's really hard work to accomplish all of the tasks in the first 2 rows over the last several months. We really appreciate all of the work and dedication that you have put into making this assessment administration season a success. Next slide. And so with that, I'm actually going to jump into some numbers. As we saw a few slides ago, there are several statewide assessments administered in DC. This spring marked the first time since 2019 that we have administered the full suite of statewide assessments in DC. And again, just want to thank everyone on this call who made that happen. LEA coordinators are on the front lines and making sure that their schools have what they need. And we just really appreciate all of the work. And we know that there were a lot of complicating factors this year with making sure that folks could stay in schools, and a lot of folks are new to their roles. And we just want to again say how much we appreciate all of the work that you have put in to make this administration season a success. As you can see, several thousand tests were completed across the assessment programs. And it's just a testament to all the hard work and planning and preparation that you all did to make it happen. So again, can't thank you enough for your partnership in this work. Next slide. In terms of closeout for access, access being the statewide assessment that determines English language proficiency, and the one assessment so far that we do have results back for. LEAs are able to, at this point, see their students' results in the WIDA assessment management system, WIDA AMS. And just as a reminder, the exit criteria for students to exit EL services is scoring a composite score of 5.0 for kindergarten and 4.5 for grades 1 through 12. That 4.5 is a new criteria for this year based on research and data that we've done over the past few years. And that adjustment was made in order to more closely align with the new WIDA standards that have been put in place over the last couple of years. Just a note for LEAs that if an EL student did score proficient on access, meaning they got that 5.0 for kindergarten or 4.5 for grades 1 through 12. Their EL status for 21-22 should not be changed in your student information systems. It will be changed for the 22-23 school year, and the students who have exited based on their access scores will have an EL indicator of no and an EL status of monitored year 1. If you do have additional questions about how to mark students in your SIS or any other questions, you can reach out to Chandy Wagner, who is on our team here at Aussie, and she will be able to assist. I did see a question in the chat about the percent of DC students that exited. I believe it is in the realm of about 15%, but would defer to Chandy and her team to provide a more definitive answer. But I believe it is about 15% of students exited this year. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to now turn it over to Yolanda to talk about some final reminders for returning materials for Park and DC Science.
Thank you, Stephanie. So first, just piggybacking on what Stephanie already said, thank you all so much for your hard work and dedication in administering these assessments this year. It is definitely appreciated. Just to go through a couple of reminders around returning materials. First, the directions for shipping materials back to Pearson, they are outlined in section 5 of your test coordinator manual. So if there's anything that you're confused about, please check that manual first. All of the paper-based and accommodated materials, all scorable materials, should have already been returned to Pearson. That date was May 27th. If there are still materials that you have, just be mindful that those materials may not receive a score. And if you do still have materials, please reach out to the assessment team to make us aware. All non-scorable secure Park and DC Science materials must be shipped to Pearson no later than June 10th, which is tomorrow. Next slide, please. So as a reminder of materials that you can shred or recycle, take a moment just to look through those. We're shredding anything that is secure. So that would be scratch paper written on by students if they happen to write on their math reference sheets, any testing tickets, any reports that you have that contain student PII, and any accommodated responses. But be clear that you should not be destroying the test booklets, answer documents, or the human reader scripts. All of that needs to be shredded. Materials that you can recycle would be your test coordinator and your test administrator manuals. Those are not secure materials, so they can be recycled. Any blank reference sheets that you have, and any paper-based items from Pearson that do not have student writing on them, those can also be recycled. All right, a reminder of what needs to be returned to Pearson. So first, for the non-scorable materials, any unused Park or DC Science test booklets, unused Park or DC Science answer documents. If you have used Park or DC Science test booklets and answer documents that have been marked as do not score, you want to make sure that you're returning them. Used Park and DC Science booklets, human reader scripts, tactile graphics, large print test booklets, and Braille test booklets. All of those materials are non-scorable and need to be returned. The scorable materials that should have already been returned May 27th include the used Park test booklets for 3rd grade, used answer documents for grades 4 through high school, transcribed Park test booklets, and transcribed Park answer documents. All of that should have been returned to Pearson already. 2 additional notes. If you are missing any labels, you can reach out to Pearson and have additional labels sent to you, but the deadline for that is tomorrow, June 10th. So if you're missing anything, please reach out to Pearson today. And also, it is possible that if you did not have any accommodated test or paper materials, you may have nothing to return. So if you're looking through this list and you're thinking like, wait, this is weird, I don't have anything to return, that may be true. As a side note to LEA managers, Pearson will be sending missing item reports to both you and the schools, and those will be sent starting on June 21st. So starting on June 21st, you will receive notification from Pearson if you are missing anything that needed to be returned. Any questions on returning materials before I turn it back over to Stephanie? I think, Victoria, you have a hand.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to type it out as fast as I could. The missing materials report, I understand that we'll get that on the 21st. Is there any way that we can get that information much sooner since our schools are finished that week and we want to make sure that they have enough time to be aware that they still have something in their building and can get it returned?
That is a great question, Victoria. It's actually a question that I had too. I did some digging on Pearson's site to see if there were any reports that would be aligned to that. Unfortunately, Pearson is only showing us the shipping information or the tracking information for items that were shipped to the schools. They do not have the tracking numbers for the labels that were included to track what was returned back. So unfortunately, there isn't a way for us to cover that sooner. I know DCPS is a very large LEA, but as best possible, checking in with your school test coordinators to make sure that they return the materials that were sent to them. You can also look to see what materials they received so that you'll have a running list of schools that did receive either paper-based or accommodated materials. And then that way, internally, you will know what they should be sending back. So hopefully that helps. Are there any other questions around return of materials? All right, well, thank you all so much. If anything comes up, please don't hesitate to reach out, and I'm going to turn this back over to Stephanie.
Thank you. You can move on to the next slide, Cassidy. So just a couple of quick reminders in the vein of closeout about data validation. We have been getting a few questions via the OST about making sure that data validation information is correct for LEAs. And so I just wanted to provide another reminder of the test security closeout checklist that went out in the NJ bulletin, I think the week before last. But as a part of the data validation process, we do ask that schools, if they made any changes to their assessment windows during the window, that they go into the QuickBase approved school test security plan and update those dates with the actual tested dates. Our data management team pulls the assessment dates from this app. And so particularly section 3, where you're listing the start and end dates, those dates do need to be updated if there were any changes to your school test schedules throughout the assessment window. We are asking that this update be made by 5 p.m. on June 16th, which is a week from today. But if you have any other questions about data validation, please submit an OST ticket with those questions, and we'll make sure it gets routed to the appropriate folks to answer. Any questions about data validation? Good question, Kayla. Just to voice over in the chat, it says, should we also update our test schedule, or do we just need to update the dates? Please do also upload an updated test schedule, the Excel document, in addition to updating the dates. Okay. there are no additional questions, we'll move on to test security closeout information, and I will turn it over to Lavinia.
Okay, and here I am. Next slide, please. Okay, so you have received in one of our recent NJ bulletins a test security file document checklist. Documentation is required to be maintained in hard copy, but may also be kept electronically. We follow the guidance of the District of Columbia's Testing Integrity Act, which requires schools to maintain that school test security file for a period of 4 years. If you have not yet accessed that checklist, you can click on it from this presentation once it's made available, but it is on Aussie's webpage under Test Security and Incident Forms. Any questions you have about test security files or this checklist, you can reach out to me either directly at my email address or at aussie.assessment@dc.gov. Next slide, please. Okay, test integrity affidavits. They're coming in fast and furiously. Thank you if you've submitted those thus far. Let's just go over briefly what this requirement involves. The school test monitor must submit 1 affidavit per approved school test security plan. So we're asking that you take a look in your school test security plan at the approved plans that you have, and that will give you an idea of how many that you must submit. For instance, some of you did your Park and DC Science as 1 plan, and it was approved as such. That means that the school test monitor submits 1 affidavit. If you had a separate approved Park plan and a separate approved DC Science plan, then that school test monitor submits 1 form for the Park and 1 for the DC Science. Now the LEA Test Integrity Coordinator submits 1 level test affidavit per assessment program, in addition to the ones that he or she collects from the school level affidavits. I'm going to pause right there, give you a chance to digest that. And if you have any questions, feel free to unmute, raise your hand, or place your question in the chat. Test security integrity and test security affidavit. How many of those forms you should submit and where you should refer to for that information. I don't see any hands, no questions, and nothing in the chat. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, there's a hand up. I'm sorry, just came through. Is that Yolanda Smith?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much.
Sure.
My question is, so I'm at a non-public. I have 1 test plan that was submitted for DC Science and for Park. And I guess my confusion is that because I have several different charter school students that we test for, all of the students are in my 1 plan. So am I only sending you 1 affidavit because it was 1 test plan for DC Science and Park? Or am I sending you an affidavit for each of the LEAs, or each of the charter schools rather?
That is a good question. Stephanie, we don't worry about how many different schools they were covering, am I correct? Isn't it just 1 per the plan? Or do we need to factor in, if it's a non-public and they had kids at different schools, do they need to do it per school?
Sorry, I was having trouble getting off mute. So as noted in the slide, and I believe in the closeout webinar that we held in May, the affidavits are test security plan based. So each school should have a plan for each assessment, and some of those assessment plans may be duplicates or maybe 2-in-1s. So for example, one school may have a Park/DC Science plan. that same school may have a access alt access plan, and then that same school may have an MSAA/DLM plan. That individual school should submit an affidavit for each of those 3 school plans. And then the LEA would submit one affidavit for each program across their LEA. So the LEA would submit one MSAA DLM affidavit that covers all of their schools. They would submit one Park DC Science affidavit that covers all of their schools.
Okay.
And similarly with access. So each approved plan should have one affidavit. So if you're a non-public and you only have one approved plan, you would be submitting one affidavit.
Perfect. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, good question, and thanks for that clarification, Stephanie. And we're hoping that part of what we're doing here in this meeting is trying to clarify the issues regarding the test security affidavit. So I do have someone who responded, they submitted 12 because the form said per test. We only need one per your plan. So we'll accept whatever you have submitted thus far, but going forward, we're going to stick to an affidavit per approved plan by assessment. Any other questions or comments at this point in time? Okay, we'll move on to our next slide. Okay, so the LEA should be collecting this from the schools within 10 business days after the conclusion of the assessment window. And then within 15 days of the conclusion of that window is when it should come to Aussie. And I know that on the form, it says at the end of the testing window for the year. For this year, we'll accept all of them no later than June the 24th. That includes access. But going forward, for clarity's sake, we're going to get it 10 days after each assessment window closes, not the entire school year window, but as the assessment ends. And we'll get information out to you in each bulletin that says when they're due by assessment for next school year. Non-public, you're submitting yours to Aussie via the OST. Can you go back one? Oh, great. Okay, there, that's good. And we want you to use the OST to submit those. So what we like for you to do is make sure, please check your QuickBase application and make sure you see the Aussie support tool tab and that you can actually utilize that. If you're getting a message that says you do not have access, then please reach out to me so we can make sure that you get access. I've had some folks who haven't had access yet and they've sent them over, but we prefer that you do this via the OST. Please make sure on the form, refer to your QuickBase approved plan, put in your LEA code and your LEA number. And then also put in your school code and your school name. Okay, Chastity.
Sorry about
That's
that.
right.
Just give me 1 second.
Looks like we're out of the slide. We'll be back. Please pause.
Just give me 1 second. Yeah.
Take your time. So it's really important that you get the LEA code and the LEA name on that one line, then the school code and the school name on the next one. Especially for some of our non-publics have multiple schools. It helps us to track and save them quickly and easier. And if you've already submitted yours and you've received a message that said, thank you for your submission, there's nothing you need to do to go back and make any corrections at this point in time. Yes, we're going to get to that in the next slide. Jeremiah, how to name those files. If you just bear with us. And Chelsea will pop a link to the test security checklist, if you will, Chelsea, into the chat, please. I think we're about to get back to our slides. So Jamia, if you refer to your approved plans in QuickBase, so if you have Armstrong Elementary School and they have their own park and DC science plan, then you need an affidavit for that school. If you have Armstrong Middle and it had its own approved plan, then yes, you would submit an affidavit for those for Armstrong Middle. Okay, we're still working on some technical difficulties. I think Yolanda's going to try to share and present for us. Okay, let's try the next slide. Okay. Really helpful. Please save your file as a P. Oh, you guys can't see it? Oh, no, we can see it. Cassidy, we can see it.
Okay, great.
Yeah, Yolanda sharing. Thank you. Save that file as a PDF. Some of yours have come across as a JPEG. If you do, I'll convert it myself, but please try to save that as a PDF. It helps. We're collecting hundreds of these. It helps with us getting them over as a PDF file. Some of you I know will go and scan on a Xerox document or something. You can rename that before you send that over to me, or before you upload it to the OST. If you would, please save it as a PDF file. That would be extremely helpful for us. So let's take a look at the file naming convention that we would like for you to use. If you're an LEA, please give the LEA name, the assessment program name, and then in parentheses, put the word LEA. That way we know this is coming from the LEA and not the test monitor. If it's a school file, please give us the LEA name, the school name, and then the assessment name, and then the test coordinator or test monitor's TC saying that it's coming from the test coordinator or test monitor. Note, you do not, if you've already submitted and you've got a message back that said, thank you, we've received your submission, you don't need to make any corrections. I appreciate the offer, but we'll take it from here if we've already received it. But for those who have not yet given us their park and DC science, we're asking you to stick to the naming convention. It'll be extremely helpful. So let's take a look. We have ABC School PCS. That's the LEA. It's at ABC Elementary, which is the name of the school, and the assessment is MSA DLM, and the file is coming from the test coordinator, and it's been saved as a PDF. Then another example is same LEA, ABC School PCS. This time it's their middle school, ABC Middle, and it is their park for the park approved plan, and it's coming from their test coordinator as well, and it's still saved as a PDF. And apparently the ABC School PCS had a different park approved plan from a from a DC science. They had a combined park and DC science plan. So they put in park, DC science, LEA, meaning it's coming from the LEA, and it too has been saved as a PDF file. So that is an example of how we would like you to name your file. If you haven't submitted it yet, anything that you do after today's meeting, please follow the guidance of this naming convention. It would be very helpful. Any questions about this naming convention? And just so you know, it's different how the LEA had to sign, name the file from how the school names the file. Because that LEA is only doing one for the assessment, and then the school has to do the one for this, both the park and the DC. Next slide, please. Thank you. So that affidavit is posted on our Aussie website under Test Security and Incident Forms webpage. And I'm going to say to you, you get that form to refer back to these slides on how to complete it. There may be some information on the form that could be a bit confusing from what we're saying here. We prefer that you follow what is here. But in any case, you get that form to us. And if I need you to make some corrections or I need to clarify some information, I will reach out to you. The file should be here no later than 5 p.m. on June the 24th. And it should come to us via the Aussie support tool. If you're an LEA, you contact your data manager and they can submit a ticket via the OST to request access on your behalf if you don't already have access. So we would like for you to check your QuickBase application to make sure you have access. If you're a non-public school test coordinator, you can send an email to aussie.callcenter@dc.gov, and that way we can set you up to give you access to the Aussie support tool. Any questions regarding the affidavit or access to or including the OST, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Okay, we'll take the next slide. Okay, let's take a deep breath. Let's talk about test security investigation. This is just a general overview. You'll get more specifics and details if, in fact, your LEA or schools are involved in a test security investigation. So here at Aussie, we review and analyze state assessment results every year to ensure that the results are valid and trustworthy in accordance with its obligations under the DC Testing Integrity Act of 2013 as amended in 2015. And this act is out on our website. If you look under test security, you will find this act. Our testing vendors will provide us with a comprehensive data forensic analysis of all state assessment response data in order to identify statistical anomalies that could indicate the possibility that irregularities or security incidents occurred in the administration of state assessments. In addition to data forensics flagging, Aussie will review other test administration and test security documentation received throughout the assessment administration. That includes incident reports, monitoring reports, and anonymous tips. So those are additional information on what's going to happen with test security investigations. But again, if you are contacted regarding any anomalies or irregularities and that an investigation needs to be conducted, we will share with you at that time how that will be carried out. I will pause for any questions that you may have at this point. Okay, I see a question. It says, does Aussie randomly select the schools or test groups for review any longer, or do you just select schools based on data irregularities and test administration concerns? So are you talking about for investigations or for monitoring, Victoria? Investigations. No, we're going to use this criteria that I referenced here. So that it's not randomly selected, it's not test groups, it's based on information that comes back in the data forensics analysis. And we'll look at that. And in addition to looking at the data forensics that have been flagged, we'll look at some other things that have occurred that we're aware of. So it will be yes to no to your first question, yes to your second. Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Victoria, for that question. Yes. Victoria just said that is a change from previous years. Yes. I believe that is accurate. Okay. Next slide. I think we're ready for the next slide. Okay, so Lea Inquiry. In instances where Aussie has determined there are documented test security issues during testing, or that the anomalies in a particular school meet the criteria for further inquiry, we will require the LEA to conduct that inquiry. The purpose is to gain an understanding of the cause or causes of the anomalies and to help Aussie determine whether the assessment results that include such anomalies are valid and trustworthy. If we require that an LEA conduct an inquiry at a particular school or schools, notification and details will be sent in early fall 2022. So you do not expect to hear anything over the summer. This will take place in early fall 2022. So June and July, you're not going to hear anything. And again, we will let you know, and we are looking to ensure that our test results are valid and trustworthy. And if that requires an investigation, then so be it. And we'll let the investigation lead us where it's going to lead us to. And we will work with you every step of the way regarding that inquiry and investigation. Next slide. All right. As I said, we'll be supporting you in conducting the test security inquiries. We're going to use something called Aussie Test Investigation Process. Since it's Aussie, we have an acronym. We're going to call it OTIP. It's a standardized, fair, and objective set of investigative procedures and processes for LEAs to conduct a professional test security inquiry that produce trustworthy findings and outcomes. So, an issue is raised, but it will be the investigation that will help us determine whether or not the findings are trustworthy, whether we can produce trustworthy findings and outcomes, excuse me. This process establishes requirements and processes, what evidence and information must be collected, the order of the investigative steps, questions to ask during the investigative interviews, how evidence is analyzed and stored, and what makes an inquiry and makes it complete. Again, more details will be provided if this is a requirement that you're being asked to participate in. And you will receive training on this investigation process. Not as a whole group, but only those who are going to be participating in an investigation. So we just want to get this general information out to you. It's been 2 years since we've had testing, which means it's been 2 years since we've had any investigations. And this is the direction that we are moving towards for this current school year. But we will be with you every step of the way. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, so we can breathe easy through June and July. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm now going to turn this over to my colleague, our leader, Stephanie.
Thanks, Lavinia.
Welcome.
Yes, so let's talk about reporting. It's very exciting that we will have results to report for the 2021-22 school year. The next several slides will go through high-level anticipated timelines for when we expect to release results, in addition to some of the supporting resources that we'll be providing LEAs and schools in communicating about the assessment results. Next slide, please. So first out of the gate is actually already out of the gate. It is access for ELLs. So as I mentioned earlier, online score reports are already available for access for ELLs in the WIDA Assessment Management System, AMS. LEA coordinators should have access to all students within their LEA, in addition to school level reports. Folks who are designated as school test coordinators will have access to all the reports within their schools. Folks who have the role of test administrator in WIDA AMS will not have access to those online reports. So at the LEA and school levels, it's just important to be sure that you are communicating those results with folks who may not be able to access them within the system. Printed score reports should have arrived at schools on June 3rd, last Friday. If you have any concerns about not having received those, please reach out to DRC customer service, and they'll be able to assist with expectations for receiving those printed reports. In terms of scores within Aussie's system for access, scores will be updated in July in the early access for ELL's Click app for students who are pre-enrolled for 2022-23. And they'll also be updated in SLED for currently enrolled students. If there are enrollment conflicts that Aussie comes across as we're putting these data into the Click app, your LEA liaison will reach out to your English learner person of contact at your LEA for further clarification and making sure that those data are accurate. Next slide. So for Ela Math and Science, the results will be coming in kind of two waves. So first, which applies to all content areas, is July 5th, is the data validation certification date for LEAs. That's for student level demographic, enrollment, and assessment participation data. So I know you all are very busy in working through data validation at the moment, and the deadline for that is July 5th. If you do have questions about that, I do encourage you to reach out to your Aussie liaison for additional guidance on data validation and making sure that those updates are made by July 5th. In terms of getting Park and DC Science results and MSAA and DLM results into the hands of LEAs, the first wave will be ELA and math results. So that will be Park and MSAA. We expect to release embargoed results to LEAs and sectors, so DCPS sector and PCSB in mid-August. And then in late August, roughly 2 weeks after the embargoed release, would be the public release of ELA and math. And then later in the fall, in late September, we would repeat the process for science. So DC Science and DLM results, expecting the embargoed results to get to LEAs in late September and the public release in mid-October. And Dominique is noting in the chat that OST submission for data validation is tomorrow. And I believe there is a validation date that is tomorrow, but may not be the final one. We're still connecting with our data management team at Aussie for guidance on the process and specific deadlines, but the final deadline that they've communicated to us is July 5th. I think there have been some changes to that, but we can make sure that we're confirming and we'll provide additional guidance in upcoming bulletins.
Thanks, Stephanie. So what we've been told is that July 5th is the day head of schools certify the data, but what the data team has routinely said is that the OST submission deadline is the last day to like raise issues so that they have time to respond to them. So just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks, that's helpful. And we will make sure that we're clarifying internally and getting the information out to you all. Next slide. So the previous slide talked about timelines for embargoed release versus public release, and the next several slides detail what is involved in each of those releases. So in terms of the files that LEAs can expect to receive as part of the embargoed results are files with individual school and LEA and sector level results. We expect the format of those files to be consistent with the 2018-19 file format, which is the last time we produced these files. And that information is embargoed until public release. So we expect that that information is not shared outside of LEA and schools. The individual student reports, ISRs, and family interpretive guides to the ISRs will be both shipped to schools and samples will be posted on Aussie's website. Those samples will be translated into the 6 most common languages and posted on Aussie's website. The ISRs will also, each individual student's ISR will also be posted in SLED on the day of public release, and folks will be able to go in and download those from SLED as well. And both ISRs and interpretive guides will be shipped to schools roughly in tandem with the public release, but probably there may be a little bit of a lag behind public release and when those paper documents actually get physically to schools. But they're roughly about the same time frame. So we're looking at kind of late August, early September for ELA and math, and October for science. Next slide. In terms of what will be created for public data reporting, and these files will be posted on Aussie's website, this list of files is the same as the files that have been produced in the past. So the same as what we produced for 1819. They include a PowerPoint presentation of an overview of the results, in addition to several Excel files of actual data. So for ELA and math, you can see the files listed here. There will be school level files or school level data, detailed performance data for ELA and math, an overview of participation rates, and then also accommodations, participation, and performance. Next slide shows much of the same information, and just that it will be produced also for the science assessments. So when we talk about ELA Math and Science, we are including both the general assessments and the alternate assessments will be reported out in these results. In terms of communications plans, I see Dominique's question is, will there be a head of school or executive director meeting with the superintendent ahead of public release? I believe that yes, that currently is the plan. We're still finalizing final communications plan with our superintendent's office at this time, but I believe that yes, there will be a briefing with the superintendent for heads of school and executive directors after you get your embargoed data, but before public release. And I see Preethi's question. When this file structure will be consistent with 1819, should you expect the exact same? I would defer to Kelly, who I believe is on the call.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Yes, we see value in keeping it consistent for this year. We will not be including the change log sheet, and we will be like very specific and exacting on the June 23rd LEA data managers meeting so that folks know what to expect from the embargoed file.
Thank you. So yes, the file format will be shared with folks ahead of time, and you'll have opportunities to ask questions at that June 23rd data manager meeting. Any other questions on the files themselves or timelines for results release? Okay, then we'll move on to the next slide, which is a high-level overview of some communications resources that are planned. So as I mentioned previously, the interpretive guides for score reports will be available and be translated into the 6 most common languages here in DC. Those interpretive guides include explanations of how to read the score reports and also provide links to additional resources to help families and students understand the results. There are examples of those guides currently posted on Aussie's website. We are refreshing them and revamping them a little, so they'll be a little bit different than what is currently on the site, but the information that will be presented there is largely consistent with past years. And thanks, Kelly, just noting that she has to hop, but if you do have any specific questions about the reporting files, she's happy to answer those for you. And her email is in the chat. One additional resource that we are planning to release is a very brief one-pager about statewide assessments, and the intended audience for that one-pager are families and caregivers in understanding what statewide assessments are and why they're important. And that resource is under development with our communications team, and we will be sharing this with LEAs prior to public results release. And Ben Peisch has noted that if there are any specific topics that you think should be part of that resource, please feel free to email him with that request, and he will make sure to incorporate folks' feedback. Okay, so we are at the end of the reports release or results release portion of the meeting. So I'm going to pause here and ask if there are any questions before we move to looking ahead to 22-23. Okay, well then with that, Cassidy, you can go ahead to the next slide and I will turn it over to you to talk about Nape activities coming up. Oh, sorry, one more question in the chat, Rob. Repeat when anticipated embargo reports to come out. So for ELA and math, we anticipate mid-August will be embargoed release to LEAs. And then for science, likely late September. Right, Cassidy, take it away.
All right, thank you so much. I'm gonna go over what Nape looks like this year for our Nape 2022-2023 program. As you can see, it's been broken down into 3 different assessments. We have our long-term trend, our field trial, and our field test. The first of which is our long-term trend. If you remember back in 2019, pre-pandemic, we did this long-term trend test as well. We did ages 9, 13, and 17, and we did part of age 13. And the purpose of bringing this long-term trend back is to compare the pre and post pandemic worlds. We're not totally post-pandemic, but current day, we have pre-pandemic and now. So we'd like to compare those age 13 groups If you're familiar with Nape at all, normally we do this by grade level, grade 4, 8, and sometimes 12. And age 13, however, is anyone in any grade that falls into that category. So it could be a 6th grader, which is mostly 7th and 8th graders, and then a couple of 9th graders as well. So there's a wide group there, and we're going to be testing in math and reading, which is our normal subjects. And you can see the actual assessment breakdown with the number of sessions, students, and the durations. For our long-term trend, we will be dealing with hopefully somewhere around 15,000 students nationally, and that should be the same for national is the key word here. We won't be getting any state level results for 22-23. We'll only be getting national level results. So we're looking at about 15,000 students assessed. That's going to take place in October to December. Then we have our other two assessments, our field trial and our field test, which are remarkably similar in so much that they are the same. The field trial, however, is the reason we have that is what we would consider, it's called a dress rehearsal. We'll be shifting away from paper-based assessment, pencil and paper, and strictly going towards what we call digitally based assessment. So only using computers that we provide. And those are going to be Microsoft Surfaces and Chromebooks. So our field trial is happening earlier. That's going to happen in February of 2023. And that is only going to be about 1,500 students, 1,700 students total across the nation and including Puerto Rico. And so it's just going to be a quick assessment to kind of get everything, work the kinks out as it is a trial, to make sure that everything is running smoothly, to make sure that the DBA process goes well. They're considering it a test of the next gen eNape platform, which has a really fancy way of saying they have new software and new computers, and they'd like to make sure that they work properly. And so they'll be doing that field trial in February, and that is ramping up for our field test. Both will be going over math, reading, and science for grade 8. And you can see again the breakdowns. Each session is going to have 25 students for 120 minutes. You can see the different questionnaires and things like that. But this assessment is going to take place in March to April. So once we've got the trial down and once we've worked out some of the kinks and things like that, they're going to move right into the field test. And again, I reiterate, we will get national level results. So no state will get results. And if you're familiar with Nape, schools and students individually have never gotten results. So you can get that. So you know what to expect when these results are released. So yeah, so in 2022, we will be doing our long-term trend. And then into 2023, we'll be showing our field trial and field test. This is a little different than most years. Normally, there's just one big national assessment or a state assessment, but this is just a little different to kind of get we're transitioning into a larger digitally based assessment, and so we'd like to have that worked out. But yeah, that's Nape for the coming year. Do we have any questions about this? Anything that questions, comments, concerns? So why are the field test dates when schools take spring break and so close to when Park begins? Nape being for every state, I think that they just take an aggregate of when schools are out. It is not necessarily like the spring break in DC has very little to do with what they'll take. The Nape is going to schedule when they schedule because it is national and because it is federally mandated. And so I don't know why they've scheduled those specific dates, but they have. When will schools and LEAs know when they've been selected to participate? Later this summer, they absolutely will. You can see that the earliest that the e-filing window begins, which is when we're submitting all of our student and school data, is August 15th for the long-term trends. Everyone who has participated for Nape will absolutely know well before that. I'm hoping we can get that into late July and early August. For all schools to be participated, who will be participating to be notified. And then it is possible that your school, if your school has been sampled, which is not a guarantee, it's not every school in DC. It is a sample. It's not everyone that you would be testing in October, December, or you'd be testing as late as April. So There's again, your schools may or may not be tested in Nape at all. It is a random sampling, random being the easier way to put it, but it is not everyone. So your schools may not be sampled at all for Nape. Do you have any more questions or comments? Is it possible for an LEA to have schools selected to participate in all programs? No, they will not be. If a school is selected for long-term trends or the field trial or the field test, they will be sampled for that specific section alone. They will not be selected for all three, or even two of the three. LEAs, I'm sorry. So yes, in that case, yes, it's possible that an LEA might have more than one school participate for each of the three. So you might have one school in the field trial and one school in the field test. That is possible, yes. Sorry, I misread the question the first time. Sure, you're welcome. Waiting on any last comments, but I think we're good. And I will
All right, so I know we all just finished our testing windows last week, and I know we're also very excited for our testing windows next admin season. So here we have a draft schedule of what our testing windows look like for the 2022-2023 administration season. You can see that these dates are very similar to the dates that we had this year. We found that this was a pretty good approach for grouping certain assessments together and staggering the times in which windows open. Keep in mind that these dates are tentative, so we're still finalizing a lot of our testing plans. And once we are sure that the dates are set in stone from our vendors and through Aussie policies, we will be sending out our final testing window dates likely in the fall before assessment or before the school year starts. But if you want to get an idea of what they might look like, this is a good indication of that. And again, these slides will be shared on the Aussie Test Coordinator page after the presentation. So you will have access to this information after this meeting today. You can go to the next slide, please.
Sorry.
I have an additional
Chelsea.
question in the chat, Steph. Yeah, this is for Cassidy. There was a question to say, when will schools and LEAs know they've been selected for Nape? Victoria just wants to reiterate the answer for that. Cassidy, if you could hop back in and just reiterate some of those dates for Nape.
So when will schools know that they've been selected for Nape? I will, the sample will get released to schools later this summer. It'll definitely be before our August 15th deadline of when we start to do our e-filing for submitting school information and student lists. So schools will know with well ahead of time that they've been sampled before August 15th. So middle of the summer is when we're looking at. There's no exact date yet, but that's when you can expect it.
Thank you, Cassidy. And you can go back to the next slide for me for a moment. Back to the tentative testing schedule. Thank you. Dominique asked a question, will 30-day windows be reinstituted next year? Dominique, you can see here that a lot of these windows are a little bit longer than 30 days. So we do offer a little bit longer than a month for some of these testing windows, including the length of the Park DC Science testing window is our longest testing window that surpasses that 30-day mark.
Sorry.
I'll take this one.
Oh, yeah.
I think Dominique is referring to in previous years, the Aussie policy was that schools needed to select 30 consecutive school days within the established window in order to complete their testing. We suspended that requirement this year due to public health considerations and making sure that folks were able to maximize the time that they had to get their students assessed. We we'll have internal conversations at Aussie regarding the policy for next year, and we'll communicate that in the participation policy that gets released in the fall. We have not yet determined whether that 30-day requirement will be reinstituted, but that will be part of the participation and performance policy that's released each fall. And I just wanted to give voice to the request in the chat about extending the alternate assessment window. The windows for MSA and DLM are established by assessment consortia that we are a part of, and we can certainly take that feedback back to the vendors regarding the length of that window. I believe that the ultimate decision is across the consortium of states who are participating in each of those programs. And so we don't have as much control over the length and timing of those windows as we do for some of the other assessments. But I will definitely make sure that we're taking back the feedback to the vendors to let them know that our stakeholders would appreciate additional time for the alternate assessments. Sorry, Chelsea, keep going.
No, you're fine. Any other questions regarding the testing windows for next year, tentative testing windows? All right, Cassie, if you can move to the next slide for me. So our next NGA meeting will be August 25th from 1 to 3, so very similar structure as this meeting. A reminder that you can register for NGA meetings through the Eventbrite links that we send through the NGA bulletin. The bulletin usually has the NGA meeting links a few weeks prior to when the meeting will happen, so make sure you are scanning the NGA bulletin and looking for upcoming dates and trainings that are pertinent to your portfolio. Meeting agendas will be sent out prior to that meeting. And they've also, right now, we're planning to have our meetings virtually over Teams, as we've done for the past year. And Cassidy, if you go to the next slide, you'll be able to see what the agenda looks like for our next NGA meeting. So we'll be going through results reporting, ISR delivery, updates to any English learner screener statuses, ALTS assessment eligibility will be starting in August, as well as assessment contacts for the upcoming 2022-2023 school year. You can go to the next slide, please. This is a plug for the NGA bulletin that we send out every week. It contains important dates, upcoming tasks that need to be completed depending on the assessment portfolio that you are managing for your LEA. So just make sure that you are updating all of your information in eSchool Plus, whether you're an LEA assessment manager or assessment point of contact for any of the programs. We want to make sure that we are getting the information out to you as clearly and as consistently as possible. So eSchool Plus is the easiest way to get added to our NGA distribution list. We can also get you on that list by emailing aussie.assessment@dc.gov. If you feel that you've not been added to the list correctly or are experiencing issues in eSchool Plus, we can add you to that list manually. Also, this is going to be another plug. We're looking to collect feedback from our LEA stakeholders for how our last assessment season went. So in the NGA bulletin in the upcoming weeks, we are going to have a link to a Google Forms survey or a Microsoft Forms survey, just asking for your feedback for the Aussie Assessments team to make sure that everything that we're doing is easy and very well laid out for LEA assessment managers. And that way we can improve upon the processes for the upcoming assessment year. You can go to the next slide for me, Cassidy. I have another question here. Do you know the Hpea 2023 testing window dates? Currently, we do not know those dates. The Hpea is not an assessment that is managed by the Aussie Office of Assessments. That's managed by the Aussie Health and Wellness Division. I can link the email in the chat for the Aussie Health and Wellness Division email. You can reach out to them and see if they've had any tentative dates. I would imagine that the tentative dates would be similar to what was issued this year. So I know we're currently in the Hpea testing window, so likely that window will not change. But again, I cannot speak to their planning since that's not an assessment program that we oversee. but I will make sure to get that information in the chat so that you can reach out to them directly. This is going to be the end of our NGA meeting. Does anybody have any questions? You can either unmute yourselves, put your questions in the chat, and then we can direct your answers to the Aussie Assessments Manager that can respond.
I just wanted to remind everyone to sign in if you haven't already done so.
Thank you, Assad. So there is a link again in the chat. If you've not signed into today's meeting, please do so that we can track attendance. And Stephanie has been so kind to put the Hpea contact email in the chat. So if you have any questions regarding that assessment, please reach out to our Health and Wellness Division for clarification. Okay, I think we may not have any further questions. Stephanie, if you wanted to close out this meeting.
Yep. Cassidy, you can jump to the next couple of slides. The next slide is just a reminder of ways to get in contact with us, both via email and through our website. But what I would like to say on slide 51, the final slide, is thank you. And thank you does not seem like enough. I know that we've all been dealing with a lot of different circumstances across LEAs and schools this spring, and the fact that we all were able to come together, make it work, and successfully get through spring 2022 assessment administration, I know was no small feat, and I really truly appreciate the partnership of everyone on this call, and just want to say thank you again. And we will look forward to being in contact with you over the summer. We will, as Chelsea mentioned, be sending out a survey to get feedback on how the administration went and things that Aussie can do to improve our support of your work in that area. And we will be looking forward to now spring 2023. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. And if you do have any additional questions or would like to reach out to the team, please feel free to do so. We're here to support you and get you the information that you need. Have a great rest of your day. And if we don't talk before August, please enjoy your summers. Thanks, everyone.